The morning light streamed through the half-closed blinds of Riverside Diner as May wiped down the counter for what felt like the 1,000th time. The familiar smell of coffee and bacon grease had long since become part of her skin, her clothes, her very being. At 27, she had mastered the art of balancing 5 plates along her arm, while navigating the maze of tables and chairs that had become her second home. "Order up," called Lou from the kitchen, his voice barely audible over the clatter of dishes and the murmur of the morning crowd. May tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and hurried to collect the plates. Pancakes for table 7, the veggie omelet for the businessman in the corner who always left exact change, and the special for the elderly couple who came in every Tuesday without fail. "Here you go," she said, placing the plates down with practiced ease. "Anything else I can get for you today?" The old man looked up at her with kind eyes. "Just keep that coffee coming, dear. You look tired today." May smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. "Just the usual morning rush. I'll be right back with that coffee." What she didn't say was that she'd been up until 3 in the morning, fingers dancing across the keys of her old keyboard, trying to capture a melody that had been haunting her for days. Music was her secret world, one she retreated to when the reality of her life, the double shifts, the rude customers, the constant worry about making rent, became too much to bear. The diner filled quickly as the morning progressed. A group of construction workers claimed the large booth by the window. A young mother tried to keep her toddler from throwing crayons on the floor, and the regular crowd of retirees settled in for their daily gossip session. "Table 9 needs their check. Table 3 is getting impatient and someone spilled orange juice by the entrance," said Danny, another waitress who looked just as exhausted as May felt. "I've got table 3, May replied, already pouring fresh coffee into a carafe. Her feet ached in her worn-out sneakers, a dull pain that she'd learned to ignore years ago. The next 4 hours passed in a blur of orders, complaints, and the occasional kind word or decent tip. By the time her lunch break rolled around, May's shirt was stained with ketchup and her ponytail was coming undone. She slipped into the back alley behind the diner, leaning against the brick wall and closing her eyes for a moment. The sounds of the city, cars honking, people shouting, music drifting from open windows created a chaotic symphony that somehow soothed her. In her mind, she transformed the noise into notes, arranging them into patterns that made sense to her even if no one else would understand. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was her roommate Tori. "Rent's due tomorrow," the text read. "You got your half?" May sighed, quickly calculating how much she had saved. Between her last paycheck and tips, she should have enough, but it would leave her with barely anything for groceries. Again. "Got it covered," she texted back, knowing she'd have to pick up an extra shift this weekend. Back inside, the afternoon crowd had started to trickle in. Business people on lunch breaks, college students with laptops, and the occasional tourist looking for an authentic local experience. "Hey, May," called Lou from the kitchen window. "You're regulars here." May glanced over at table 12, where an older woman with silver-streaked hair sat with a book open in front of her. Professor Chen, who taught music theory at the community college downtown, came in every Thursday and always ordered the same thing. "Turkey club? No mayo, extra tomato with a side of sweet potato fries." "Good afternoon, Professor," May said, approaching the table with a glass of water. "The usual today?" The professor looked up from her book and smiled. "You know me too well. How are you doing, May? Still playing?" It was their weekly exchange. The professor had discovered May's passion for music months ago, when she'd caught her humming a complex melody while refilling her coffee. "When I can find the time," May replied. The same answer she gave every week. "You need to make the time," Professor Chen said, her voice gentle but firm. "Talent like yours shouldn't be hidden away." May nodded politely but didn't respond. What could she say? That she was too busy surviving to pursue a dream? That music was a luxury she couldn't afford beyond those precious moments stolen in the middle of the night? The afternoon shifted into evening and the diner transformed again. Families with children, couples on casual dates, solitary diners seeking comfort food. May moved between them all, taking orders, delivering food, clearing tables, her body on autopilot while her mind wandered. Sometimes, she'd catch snippets of conversations, dreams shared, relationships ending, celebrations of small victories. Each story found its way into her mental notebook, potential lyrics for songs she might never write. "Can I get you folks anything else?" she asked a group of friends celebrating a birthday. "Just the check, thanks," one of them replied, barely looking up from their phone. May nodded and moved away, used to being invisible. That's what serving was in many ways. Being present enough to anticipate needs but invisible enough not to intrude. It was exhausting to exist in that in-between space for hours at a time. By the time her shift ended at 9, May's entire body ached. She counted her tips in the break room. Not bad for a Thursday, but not great either. It would be enough to buy groceries for the week if she was careful. "You heading home?" asked Danny, who was just starting her night shift. "Yeah, need to catch the 9:30 bus," May replied, shrugging on her jacket. "Get some rest." "You look dead on your feet," May laughed softly. "Don't I always?" The bus was crowded with the evening commuters, people heading home from late shifts or going out for the night. May found a seat near the back and leaned her head against the window, watching the city lights blur together. In her mind, she transformed the rhythm of the bus into a bass line, the hum of conversations into melodies. Her apartment was dark when she arrived, her roommates either out or already asleep. The silence was a relief after the constant noise of the diner. She kicked off her shoes, dropped her bag on the floor, and headed straight for the shower, letting the hot water wash away the smell of grease and the tension in her muscles. Later, wrapped in her oldest, most comfortable sweater, May made herself a cup of tea and sat cross-legged on her bed. The keyboard waited for her on the small desk by the window, an old Yamaha that had been a gift from her grandmother years ago. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers, a portal to another world where she wasn't just a waitress with sore feet and stained uniforms. She placed her fingers on the keys, not pressing down yet, just feeling their cool smoothness beneath her fingertips. Then slowly she began to play. The melody that had been haunting her for days finally found its form, flowing from her fingers as if it had always existed, just waiting to be discovered. For the next hour, May lost herself in the music. She forgot about the rude customer who had complained about his eggs being too runny, the constant worry about money, the exhaustion that seemed to live in her bones these days. In this moment, she was just a musician, creating something that hadn't existed before. When she finally stopped playing, her fingers stiff and her eyes heavy with sleep, May noticed a text from Tori. "Your music woke me up. It was beautiful. You should do something with it." May stared at the message, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. Pride that someone had enjoyed her playing, embarrassment that she'd disturbed her roommate, and a small, persistent spark of longing. What would it be like to play for people who actually came to listen? To have her music matter to someone other than herself? She set her phone down without replying and crawled under her covers, setting her alarm for the early morning shift tomorrow. As she drifted off to sleep, melodies continued to swirl in her mind, notes and rhythms intertwining with the faces of the people she'd served today, creating a soundtrack to a life she lived and the one she dreamed about. Morning would come too soon, bringing with it another day of serving plates and pouring coffee. But for now, in the quiet darkness of her room, May allowed herself to imagine a different future, one where her fingers hit keys that created music people wanted to hear, not just orders they wanted to eat. The Tuesday morning rush at Riverside Diner was in full swing. May balanced a coffee pot in one hand and a stack of menus in the other as she weaved between tables. The clock on the wall seemed frozen at 8:47, though she checked it at least 10 times in the last hour. "More coffee?" "Please," called a man from the corner booth, raising his mug without looking up from his newspaper. "Coming right up," May replied, the phrase so familiar it required no thought. She made her way to his table, noticing his suit looked expensive and out of place among the diner's usual crowd of construction workers and office assistants. As she refilled his cup, she hummed softly, a habit she couldn't seem to break, especially when she was tired. Last night she'd stayed up late again, working on a new song that had come to her during her shift. "That's an interesting melody," the man said, looking up from his paper. "Something original?" May blinked, surprised that he'd noticed, let alone commented. Most customers barely registered her existence beyond her ability to bring food. "Oh, sorry. Didn't realize I was humming." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, suddenly self-conscious. "Don't apologize. It was good. Unusual chord progression." He studied her with curious eyes. "You write music?" "Just For myself, she said, glancing around to make sure no other customers needed her. Lou was giving her the eye from the kitchen, pointing to an order ready for pickup. The man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. I'm Ray. I run a small recording studio downtown. If you ever want to play something in a space with decent acoustics, give me a call. May took the card automatically, too surprised to refuse. I'm not really— Order up, May. Lou's voice cut through their conversation. I should go, she said, slipping the card into her apron pocket without looking at it. Think about it, Ray said, returning to his newspaper. No pressure. Throughout her shift, May found herself touching the card in her pocket, as if to confirm it was real. She'd met people like Ray before, men who made big promises that turned out to be something else entirely. Still, something about his genuine interest in her music had caught her off guard. When she finally got home that night, she pulled out the card and examined it properly. Ray Wilson, producer, Cityscape Studios, it read, with an address downtown and a phone number. A quick internet search showed that Cityscape Studios was indeed a real place, with a modest but professional website, featuring local bands and solo artists. What are you looking at? Asked Tori, her roommate, peering over her shoulder. Nothing, May said, closing the browser. Just something a customer gave me. Tori raised an eyebrow. A customer gave you a recording studio card? Why? May shrugged, suddenly feeling foolish. He heard me humming and thought. I don't know what he thought. You should call, Tori said, flopping onto the couch beside her. What's the worst that could happen? I could waste my time, get my hopes up, or end up in some sketchy situation, May replied. But she didn't throw the card away. 3 days passed, and May found herself pulling out the card each night, turning it over in her fingers as she sat at her keyboard. The idea of playing in a real studio, with professional equipment instead of her worn-out Yamaha, was tempting in a way she hadn't expected. On Saturday afternoon, during a rare day off, she finally called the number. Cityscape Studios, a woman's voice answered. Hi, I'm calling for Ray? Ray Wilson? May's voice sounded strange to her own ears, higher than normal. May I ask who's calling? May, He gave me his card at Riverside Diner. Said if I wanted to play something— Oh, you must be the waitress. He mentioned you. Hold on. There was a moment of silence, then Ray's voice came on the line. May from Riverside. You called? Yeah, I'm not sure why, actually. She almost hung up then, but something kept her on the line. Ray laughed, a warm sound without mockery. Curiosity, interest, a moment of madness. All valid reasons. Listen, I've got the studio free today until 4 if you want to come by. No strings, just a chance to play on a decent keyboard in a space designed for sound. May hesitated, her practical side warring with the part of her that had been composing melodies in her head since she was a child. I'm not promising anything, she said finally. I just want to see what it sounds like. That's all I'm offering, Ray replied. The address is on the card. Come by whenever you're ready. 2 hours later, May stood outside a nondescript building in the Arts District gathering her courage. She'd brought her sheet music handwritten. On paper she'd salvaged from Tori's college notebooks and changed her outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and a simple blue sweater. The door to Cityscape Studios was propped open with a brick, a handwritten sign pointing up a flight of stairs. May climbed them slowly, hearing the faint sound of a bass guitar from somewhere inside. At the top, she found a small reception area where a young woman with brightly colored hair sat at a desk. Can I help you? She asked, looking up from her computer. I'm here to see Ray. I'm May. The woman's face lit up with recognition. Oh, he's in Studio B. I'll take you back. She led May through a hallway decorated with framed album covers and band posters, stopping at a door marked with a simple B. He's in there, she said, gesturing for May to go in. The studio was smaller than May had imagined, but still impressive to someone who had only ever played on a keyboard in her bedroom. A grand piano took center stage, surrounded by various other instruments and recording equipment. Ray looked up from a mixing board when she entered. You came, he said, sounding genuinely pleased. Welcome to my humble domain. It's bigger than I expected, May said, taking in the soundproofed walls and the expensive-looking equipment. Ray laughed. It's actually tiny by industry standards, but it's mine. Do you want some water or coffee before you play? No, I'm good. May clutched her sheet music tighter. I should warn you, I've never had lessons or anything. I just play. Some of the best musicians I know never had a formal lesson in their lives, Ray said, gesturing toward the piano. Whenever you're ready. No pressure. May approached the piano cautiously, running her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing down. It was intimidating, this beautiful instrument that probably cost more than she made in a year. Can I warm up a bit first? She asked. Take all the time you need. I'll just be over here pretending not to listen, Ray said, turning back to his mixing board. May sat down at the piano bench, placed her music on the stand, and took a deep breath. Then slowly at first she began to play. The sound was incredible, rich and full in a way her keyboard at home could never produce. She started with a simple piece she'd written years ago, something she knew by heart, then gradually moved into newer compositions. As she played, she forgot about Ray, about the studio, about her nervousness. There was only the music flowing from her fingers like it had always been there, waiting to be released. When she finished her third piece, she heard a slow clap from behind her. Ray had moved closer, leaning against the wall with an expression of genuine admiration. That was... He paused, searching for the right word. Honest, really honest music. May felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. Thanks. Who are your influences? He asked, sitting down on a nearby stool. I hear some classical training in there, but also jazz, maybe some folk. I listen to everything, May admitted. My grandmother played classical piano, so that's where I started. But I love jazz, indie stuff, even some experimental electronic music. They talked for nearly an hour about music, favorite artists, albums that had changed their lives, the challenges of composing. Ray never made her feel stupid or amateur, even when she struggled to explain her creative process using proper terminology. So, he said finally, checking his watch, I've got another session coming in soon, but I wanted to ask, would you be interested in recording some of your pieces? Nothing fancy, just a simple demo. I think your music deserves to be heard by more than just me and your roommate. May stared at him, waiting for the catch. Why would you do that? You don't even know me, Ray shrugged. Because I've been in this business for 20 years and I can count on one hand the number of times I've heard something truly original walk through that door. I'm not promising fame and fortune, May. Just a chance to document what you're creating. I can't afford studio time, she said bluntly. I'm a waitress. We can work something out, Ray replied. Maybe you record during off hours when the studio would be empty anyway. Or we could do a trade. You help with some admin work, I give you studio time. It seemed too good to be true, which made May suspicious. But the thought of hearing her music played back through professional speakers, of having a recording she could share or submit somewhere, it was tempting in a way that made her heart race. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, Ray said, standing up. The offer doesn't expire. Just don't think too long. Music like yours shouldn't stay hidden. As she walked home from the studio, May felt lighter than she had in years. For the first time since she'd started working at the diner, she allowed herself to imagine a different future, one where her music was more than just a late-night hobby, more than just a dream she was too practical to pursue. That night, she sat at her keyboard with renewed purpose, the memory of the grand piano's sound still fresh in her mind. She played until her fingers ached, until Tori knocked on her door and asked, with a mixture of annoyance and curiosity, what had gotten into her. I went to a studio today, May admitted. A real recording studio. Tori's eyes widened. And? May smiled, the expression reaching her eyes this time. I'm going back next week. The alarm blared at 4:30 a.m., jolting May from a dream where she was playing piano on a stage, the audience a blur of faces. She fumbled for her phone, silencing it before it could wake Tori in the next room. For a moment she lay in the darkness, the remnants of the dream still clinging to her consciousness. Reality quickly set in. Morning shift at the diner started at 6 a.m. Then she had a recording session with Ray at 7 p.m., and somewhere in between she needed to finish the lyrics for her newest song. Sleep had become a luxury she could rarely afford. May dragged herself out of bed, moving quietly through her morning routine. As she pulled on her diner uniform, a pale blue button-up shirt and black pants that had faded to gray with too many washes, she caught sight of the calendar on her wall. Red circles marked her recording sessions, blue circles her diner shifts. The page was a maze of overlapping colors, barely any white space left. The diner was quiet when she arrived. Just Lou in the kitchen prepping for the day and Danny counting the register float. "You look like death warmed over," Danny said, glancing up. "Late night?" Mee shrugged, tying her apron around her waist. "Studio session. Didn't finish until midnight. Still doing that music thing, huh?" Danny said, not unkindly. "Good for you. I'm too tired after shifts to do anything but watch bad TV." The morning progressed as usual. The pre-work crowd coming in for coffee and breakfast, the rush of orders, the constant movement between tables. May moved on autopilot, her mind elsewhere, mentally arranging notes and tweaking lyrics even as she refilled coffee cups and took orders. "Earth to May," Lou called from the kitchen window. "Order's been sitting here for 5 minutes. "Sorry," she mumbled, grabbing the plates. Her hands felt stiff today, the muscles in her forearms tight from last night's intense piano session. By mid-morning, her feet were already aching, and she still had 6 hours to go. The diner door opened, bringing in a gust of cold air and a group of business people who settled into her section, all suits and important expressions. "Coffee all around," one of them said without looking up from his phone. "And we're in a hurry." May nodded, hurrying to get the coffee pot. As she poured, she noticed one of the women staring at her. "Do I know you from somewhere?" the woman asked, frowning slightly. May shook her head. "I don't think so. I've been working here for years, though." "No, it's something else." The woman tapped her fingers on the table, then suddenly snapped them. "You're the piano player from that video Ray posted. Midnight Confessions, right?" May nearly dropped the coffee pot. 2 weeks ago, Ray had convinced her to let him post a simple video of her playing one of her compositions on the studio's social media accounts. She'd agreed only because he'd promised it would be low-key, just a way to get some feedback. "Oh, yeah, that's me," she said, feeling her cheeks warm. "I knew it. I sent that video to like 10 people. Your music is amazing." The other people at the table were now looking at her with curious expressions. May felt exposed, as if they could see through her worn uniform to the exhausted, hopeful musician underneath. "Thanks," she managed. "Can I get you all some menus?" The rest of her shift passed in a blur of orders and cleaning and the 1,000 small tasks that made up her workday. But something had shifted. A customer had recognized her. Someone had seen her video and remembered her music. When her shift finally ended, May hurried home to shower and change before heading to the studio. Her apartment was a mess. Dishes piled in the sink, laundry waiting to be done, unopened mail on the table. She'd have to deal with it all tomorrow, or the next day, or whenever she could find the time. The studio had become a second home over the past month. Ray had kept his word about letting her record during off hours, and she'd become familiar with the equipment, learning how to set up microphones and adjust levels with his guidance. "There she is," Ray said as she walked in, looking up from his computer. "I was beginning to think you'd stood me up." "Sorry, shift ran late," May said, setting down her bag. "Has there been any more feedback on the video?" Ray grinned. "Oh, you mean the video that's at 3,000 views and counting? The one that got shared by Music Now and 3 local radio stations? That video?" Mee stared at him. "You're joking." "Nope. Check for yourself." He turned his computer screen toward her, showing the studio's social media page. There she was, playing her song in the dim light of the studio, her face partly hidden by her hair. The view count read 3247. "This is, I don't understand," she said, scanning the comments. People praising her playing, asking where they could hear more, wanting to know when she would perform live. "I told you your music deserved to be heard," Ray said simply. "Now, are we recording tonight or what?" They worked for hours, laying down tracks for 3 of her songs. Ray pushed her harder than usual, making her redo sections until they were perfect, suggesting small changes that made the pieces stronger. By the time they finished, it was nearly midnight again. "One more thing before you go," Ray said as she packed up her sheet music. "A friend of mine runs the Blue Note downtown. Small place but good crowd. They have an open mic night on Thursdays. I think you should play." May froze. "Live in front of people? That's generally how performances work," Ray said dryly.
"Just one song."
"Get a feel for it. If you hate it, you never have to do it again." The thought made her stomach knot with anxiety. Playing in the studio was one thing, safe, controlled, with only Ray to hear her mistakes. Playing in front of strangers was something else entirely. "I don't know," she said, zipping up her bag. "Think about it," Ray said. "Thursday, 7 p.m. I'll save you a spot just in case. The next morning, May was back at the diner running on 4 hours of sleep and too much coffee. Her body moved through the familiar routine, while her mind spun with thoughts of the open mic night. Could she really do it? Get up on a stage and play for people who had paid to be there? You look miles away, said a voice breaking into her thoughts. She looked up to find Professor Chen at her usual table, watching her with knowing eyes. Sorry, May said. The usual today? Yes, please. And maybe a side of whatever's got you so distracted. May hesitated, then found herself telling the professor about the video, the recording sessions, and Ray's suggestion about the open mic night. And you're scared, Professor Chen said when she finished. It wasn't a question. May nodded. What if I freeze up? What if they hate it? What if they love it? The professor interrupted gently. What if this is the beginning of something wonderful? I don't know if I can do both, May admitted, gesturing around the diner. This job and music. I'm already so tired all the time. Professor Chen smiled. That's a bridge to cross when you come to it. For now, just play the open mic. See what happens. Thursday came too quickly. May had asked Danny to cover the last 2 hours of her shift, promising to return the favor on the weekend. She changed in the diner's bathroom, swapping her uniform for jeans and a simple blue top that Tori had insisted brought out her eyes. The Blue Note was a small venue tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. Through the windows, May could see that it was already half full, people sitting at small tables with drinks and sharing conversation. Her courage nearly failed her then, but the thought of letting Ray down after all he'd done for her pushed her forward. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of coffee and wine. A small stage occupied one corner, currently empty except for a microphone stand and a piano that had seen better days. Ray waved to her from a table near the front. You came, he said, looking genuinely pleased. I've got you scheduled third. That okay? May nodded, not trusting her voice. She sat beside him, watching as the first performer, a young man with a guitar, took the stage. He was good, his voice strong and his lyrics clever. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause. The second performer was a duo, 2 women with beautiful harmonies. May's anxiety grew with each passing minute. Then it was her turn. Ray gave her an encouraging nod as the host called her name. Next up, we have a first-timer at the Blue Note. Please welcome May Lin. The walk to the stage felt endless. May sat at the piano adjusting the microphone with trembling hands. The audience was a blur of faces, just like in her dream. She took a deep breath, placed her fingers on the keys, and began to play. The first notes were shaky, but as the familiar melody took over, her confidence grew. This was her song, her creation. No one else in the world could play it exactly the way she did. The realization was both terrifying and liberating. When she finished, there was a moment of silence and then applause. Real, genuine applause, not just polite clapping, but enthusiastic appreciation. May stood, her legs unsteady, and managed a small bow before hurrying back to Ray's table. That was amazing, he said, his eyes bright with pride. How did it feel? Scary, she admitted. But also, right? Like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Later that night, as she lay in bed replaying the performance in her mind, her phone buzzed with a text from Ray. Check the studio page, it read. Someone posted a video of your performance. Already at 500 views. This is just the beginning, May. She opened the link with shaking fingers. There she was, playing her heart out on a small stage in a coffee shop. In the comments, people were asking where they could hear more. If she had an album, when her next performance would be for the first time, May allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, her music could be more than just a dream. The path ahead was unclear, fraught with obstacles and uncertainties. She still had shifts at the diner tomorrow, bills to pay, a life balanced on the edge of exhaustion. But something had changed. She had changed, and whatever came next, she would face it with her fingers on the keys and her heart in the music. The coffee pot slipped from May's tired fingers, shattering against the diner floor in a spray of hot liquid and glass. She stood frozen for a moment, staring at the mess as conversations around her quieted. Second time this week, Lou called from the kitchen, his voice more concerned than angry. You okay out there? May grabbed a mop and dustpan from the supply closet, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. I'm fine, she called back, though she was anything but. The truth was she was exhausted. 3 months had passed since her first open mic night. and her life had transformed into a relentless cycle of diner shifts and music. She played at the Blue Note every Thursday now, and had added weekend performances at 2 other venues. Her demo, recorded with Ray, had caught the attention of local radio stations, and Midnight Confessions was in regular rotation on WCTY's Indie Hour. Danny appeared at her side, taking the mop from her hands. "I've got this. Go take 5 minutes, but no buts. You look dead on your feet, go." May retreated to the break room, sinking onto the worn couch with a grateful sigh. She checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Ray and a text that simply read, "Call me ASAP, big news." Her stomach fluttered with a mixture of excitement and dread. Ray's big news had been coming more frequently lately. A feature in the local arts paper, an invitation to play the summer festival, a small but growing online following. Each opportunity pushed her further into the world of music and made her double life at the diner more difficult to maintain. She dialed Ray's number, leaning her head against the wall and closing her eyes as it rang. "About time," Ray answered. "Where have you been?" "Working," May said simply. "Some of us still have day jobs." "What's the news? You know Songbird Records? The indie label that signed the Hollows last year?" May sat up straighter. "Yeah? Their scout was at your show last night. They want to meet with you. Tomorrow." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Songbird Records was small but respected, known for giving artists creative freedom and fair deals. "Tomorrow? I can't, I have a shift." Ray's sigh crackled through the phone. "May, this is Songbird. You need to make this meeting." "I can't just not show up for work," she protested, though a voice in her head was screaming at her to find a way, anyway, to make it happen. "Then it's time to have a conversation with your boss," Ray said. "This isn't just a hobby anymore, May. People are paying attention. You need to decide what you want." After they hung up, May sat for a long moment, her mind racing. What did she want? Music had always been her escape, her secret joy. Now it was becoming something else, something public. Something with expectations and pressure and possibilities she'd never allowed herself to imagine. A knock on the break room door interrupted her thoughts. It was Hank, the diner manager, his face creased with concern. "Danny said you were taking a break. Everything okay?" May looked up at him, this man who had given her a job when she desperately needed one, who had been flexible with her schedule when she started recording, who pretended not to notice when she scribbled lyrics on order pads during slow periods. "I need to talk to you," she said, "about tomorrow." 20 minutes later, she emerged from the manager's office with shaking hands and a day off for her meeting. Hank had been understanding, more than understanding. He'd been supportive. "This diner's been a stepping stone for all kinds of folks," he'd told her. "Never meant to be forever for most. You go to that meeting, see what they have to say." The next day, May sat across from Audrey Powell, a sharply dressed woman with intelligent eyes who represented Songbird Records. They met at a sleek downtown coffee shop that made Riverside Diner look like a relic from another century. "Your demo impressed us," Audrey said, stirring her latte. "Raw talent, genuine emotion, distinctive sound. We think there's potential there." "Thank you," May said, trying to sound professional despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "We'd like to offer you a development deal. 6 months to work with our producers, refine your sound, record an EP. If all goes well, we'll talk about a full album." May's mouth went dry. "That sounds amazing." "There's a catch," Audrey continued, her expression serious. "We need your full commitment. This would involve touring to support the EP. Nothing major, just regional venues at first, but it means being on the road." "Are you prepared for that?" The question hung in the air between them. Being on the road meant leaving the diner, leaving her apartment, leaving the safe, predictable life she'd built for herself. "I'd need to think about it," May said finally, "and I'd need to see the contract details." Audrey nodded approvingly. "Smart. I'll have our legal team send everything over. Take a few days, but don't take too long. We're excited about you, May, but the industry moves quickly." When she got home, May found Tori and their other roommate, Jin, waiting for her with expectant faces. "Well?" Tori demanded as soon as she walked through the door. "What did they say?" May dropped onto the couch, still processing. "They offered me a development deal. 6 months to record an EP, then touring." Jin let out a whoop of excitement, but Tori studied her face carefully. "That's amazing," she said. "So why do you look like someone died?" "Because it means leaving the diner," May said. "Leaving everything stable in my life. What if it doesn't work out?" What if I'm not good enough? What if you regret not taking this chance for the rest of your life? Jin interrupted. Look, I've heard you play. You're the real deal, and even if it doesn't work out exactly like you hope, you'll have tried. How many people get that chance? Later that night, unable to sleep, May sat at her keyboard, fingers hovering over the keys. The melodies that had once been her private refuge now felt weighted with possibility and expectation. Was she ready for this? Could she really walk away from the security of her job, small as it was? Her phone buzzed with a text from Ray. Well? She didn't respond immediately. Instead, pulling up the recordings they'd made together, she listened to her own voice, her own playing, trying to hear what others heard. Was it special enough? Worth the risk? The next morning, she arrived at the diner an hour before her shift to talk to Hank. He listened quietly as she explained the offer, the opportunity, the decision she needed to make. So you're giving notice, he said when she finished. I don't know, May admitted. Part of me wants to keep this job as a backup. Just in case. Hank leaned back in his chair, studying her with kind eyes. Let me tell you something. 20 years ago, I was offered a chance to buy into a restaurant downtown. Real fancy place, nothing like this. I turned it down because it felt too risky. Stayed here instead, worked my way up to manager. It's been a good life, don't get me wrong. But sometimes I wonder what might have been. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out some papers. I'm not going to let you make that mistake. Here's what we're going to do. I'm putting you on leave. 6 months. Your job will be waiting if you need it, but my guess is you won't be coming back. May stared at him, speechless. The diner's been here 30 years. Hank continued. It'll be here if things don't work out. But this chance? This might not come again. 2 weeks later, May signed the contract with Songbird Records. The terms were fair, the expectations clear. 6 months to create an EP, with support from their production team. Then a small tour of regional venues to build an audience. Her last shift at the diner was bittersweet. Regular customers brought cards and small gifts when they heard she was leaving to pursue music. Lou made her favorite dessert, apple pie with cinnamon ice cream. Danny hugged her fiercely at the end of the night. You better get famous, she said, so I can tell people I worked with you. I'm not going to get famous, May laughed. I'll be lucky if anyone outside the city ever hears my songs. Well, someone's going to be playing your music in this diner either way, Danny replied. Hank already added your demo to the playlist. The studio work was more intense than anything May had experienced before. Days stretched into nights as she worked with Songbird's producers to refine her sound without losing what made it unique. There were creative differences, compromises, moments of doubt and moments of pure joy when everything came together perfectly. 3 months in, Audrey called her into the office. May's stomach dropped. Sure, she was about to be told the label had changed their mind. Instead, Audrey pushed a tablet across the desk, open to a music blog. Read this, she said, her usual cool demeanor cracking with excitement. The article was titled, 5 Indie Artists to Watch This Year. May's name was third on the list, alongside a photo Ray had taken of her at the Blue Note. May Lin creates piano-driven indie pop that feels both timeless and fresh, the article read. Her forthcoming EP, Service Notes, promises to be one of the year's most exciting debuts. They haven't even heard the whole EP, May said, dazed. People are talking about you, Audrey replied. The singles we've released are connecting. We're getting inquiries about licensing Midnight Confessions for a streaming show soundtrack. The realization hit May like a wave. This was really happening. Her music, once played only in the privacy of her bedroom, was reaching people. Strangers were connecting with her most personal thoughts and feelings. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The night before the EP release, May couldn't sleep. She slipped out of bed and went to the window of the small apartment Songbird had arranged for her, looking out at the city lights. 6 months ago, she'd been balancing plates and pouring coffee, stealing moments for her music whenever she could. Now her days were filled with recording sessions, photo shoots, interviews with music blogs. Tomorrow, people all over the country could listen to her songs if they wanted to. The thought was overwhelming. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ray. Nervous? Terrified, she typed back. What if no one listens? What if they listen and hate it? His response came quickly. They'll listen. Some will love it, some won't. That's how it goes. But the music exists now. No one can take that away. May smiled at his words, feeling some of her anxiety ease. He was right. Whatever happened next, she had made something real, something true. She had taken the leap that so many people only dream about. And even if she somehow ended up back at Riverside Diner, wearing that pale blue uniform and balancing plates along her arm, she would know that she had tried. That for a while at least, her fingers had hit keys that created music people wanted to hear, not just orders they wanted to eat. The tour bus rumbled beneath May as she stared out the window, watching unfamiliar landscapes blur past. 18 months had flown by since she'd signed with Songbird Records. 18 months of studio sessions, small venues, radio interviews, and endless highways connecting cities she'd once only read about. Her EP service notes had done better than anyone expected, especially Midnight Confessions, which had been featured in a popular streaming show and introduced her music to thousands of new listeners. The follow-up album, completed just 2 months ago, was set for release next week. 20 minutes to the hotel. The tour manager called from the front of the bus. Press interview at 6, soundcheck at 7, show at 9. May nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. Tomorrow they'd be in her hometown for the final show of the tour. The venue was 3 blocks from Riverside Diner. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tori. "We got tickets for tomorrow. Front row. Can't wait to see you." A smile tugged at May's lips. Despite her busy schedule, she'd managed to stay close with Tori and Jin. They'd flown out to see her twice during the tour, showing up backstage with homemade signs and fierce hugs that reminded her of who she was beyond the stage lights and autograph sessions. As the bus pulled into the hotel parking lot, May gathered her things, notebook filled with song ideas, dog-eared paperback, water bottle covered in stickers from different cities. The life of a touring musician wasn't glamorous, at least not at her level. It was budget hotels and early mornings, sore throats and homesickness, punctuated by those perfect moments on stage when everything fell into place. The interview that evening was with a local music blogger, a young woman with bright purple hair who asked thoughtful questions about May's songwriting process. "Your lyrics often reference your time as a waitress," she noted. "Songs like Corner Booth Confessions and Closing Time Melodies. How did that experience shape your music?" May considered the question, thinking back to her days at Riverside. "Those years taught me to really see people," she said finally. "When you're serving someone food, you're witnessing these small, intimate moments in their lives. First dates, business meetings, family celebrations, lonely meals. I started writing about those observations, those glimpses into other people's stories. And now you're living your own story," the blogger said. "Did you ever imagine this would happen when you were refilling coffee cups?" "Never," May admitted with a small laugh. "I played music because I needed to, not because I thought it would lead anywhere. It was my escape, my private joy. Sharing it with others still feels surreal sometimes." Later, during soundcheck, May sat at the piano on the darkened stage, testing the acoustics with fragments of new songs. The venue was larger than what she was used to. 500 capacity, nearly sold out according to the promoter. A far cry from the Blue Note's intimate setting or Riverside Diner's cramped break room, where she used to scribble lyrics during her lunch breaks. Her phone buzzed again, a number she didn't recognize. Normally she would ignore it, but something made her answer. "Hello? May, it's Hank from Riverside." May sat up straight, surprised. "Hank, how are you? How did you get my number?" "Your friend Tori gave it to me. Hope that's okay." His familiar voice brought back memories of early morning shifts and the smell of pancakes on the grill. "I heard you're playing in town tomorrow." "Yeah, final show of the tour." "Are you coming?" "Wouldn't miss it. But that's not why I'm calling. I was wondering, would you consider stopping by the diner tomorrow, before the show? The staff would love to see you, and well, there's something I want to talk to you about." Curiosity piqued, May agreed. "I could come by around noon? We don't have to be at the venue until later." "Perfect," Hank said, sounding pleased. "See you then." The next morning, May stood outside Riverside Diner feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and nervousness. It had only been 18 months, but returning to the place where she'd spent so many hours of her life felt like stepping back in time. The bell above the door jingled as she pushed it open. The familiar sounds and smells washed over her. Coffee brewing, bacon sizzling, the clatter of plates and murmur of conversations. For a moment, she half expected Lou to call out an order for her to deliver. "May." Danny spotted her first, rushing over to pull her into a hug. Look at you. All famous and everything. May laughed, hugging her back. Hardly famous. Just making music. Others gathered around. Lou emerging from the kitchen with flour on his apron, the new waitress May had only met once before. Regular customers who remembered her from her serving days. It was overwhelming. This wave of genuine affection from people who had known her before stages and spotlights. There she is, Hank said, appearing from the back office. Our local celebrity. Stop it, May protested, feeling her cheeks warm. I'm just passing through town. Selling out the pavilion is a little more than passing through, Hank said with a wink. Come on back to the office. I want to show you something. Curious, May followed him, waving to familiar faces as she passed. The manager's office was exactly as she remembered. Slightly cluttered desk, schedule posted on the wall, photos of staff outings over the years. But there was something new, a framed article on the wall. May moved closer to look at it. It was a feature from Melody Maker magazine with her photo prominently displayed. From serving plates to hitting keys, the remarkable rise of May Lin, the headline read. I had it framed the day it came out, Hank said, watching her reaction. Not every day one of our own makes it into a national magazine. May stared at the article, at her own face looking back at her. I still can't believe any of this is happening sometimes, she admitted. Believe it, Hank said firmly. You earned it. Which brings me to what I wanted to talk to you about. He gestured for her to sit. I've been thinking about the diner, about making some changes. Changes? May asked, suddenly concerned. You're not closing, are you? No, nothing like that. Actually, business is better than ever. That's partly thanks to you. Me? How? Hank chuckled. You're kidding, right? We've become something of a landmark. The diner where May Lin worked before she got famous. People come in hoping to sit at your old section. We've got a plaque on table 7. That's where you were standing when Ray first heard you humming. May's mouth fell open. You're joking, not at all. And your music plays in here all day. The customers love it, especially the ones who remember you. He leaned forward, his expression growing more serious, which gave me an idea. What would you think about playing here? Once a year, maybe. A special event. Nothing big. Just you at a piano in the corner where the register is now. We'd close to regular business, sell tickets, make it intimate. You want me to perform here? May asked, trying to wrap her mind around the concept. Call it giving back to your roots, and selfishly it would be good for business. Hank's eyes twinkled. Plus, I think you might enjoy coming full circle. The idea was unexpected but oddly appealing. To play in the place where her journey had started for the people who had supported her from the beginning. I'd need to check with my manager and the label, she said slowly. But personally, I love the idea, Hank beamed. Excellent. Now one more thing before you go. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small box. The staff all chipped in. A little good luck token for tonight's show. May opened the box to find a delicate silver charm bracelet. Among the charms were a tiny piano, a coffee cup, and a musical note. To remember where you started, Hank explained, and how far you've come. Tears pricked at May's eyes as she fastened the bracelet around her wrist. I never properly thanked you, she said, for giving me that leave of absence, for believing I would make it. I just gave you room to fly, Hank said simply. You did the hard part yourself. That night, standing backstage at the pavilion, May could hear the crowd gathering on the other side of the curtain. Her band was doing final instrument checks. Her tour manager was reviewing the set list, and somewhere in the front row, Tori and Jin were waiting to cheer her on. She touched the bracelet on her wrist, drawing strength from its reminder of her journey. The nervous energy that always preceded a show buzzed through her. But there was something else too, a profound sense of gratitude for the path that had led her here. When the lights dimmed and the crowd roared, May stepped onto the stage, taking her place at the piano. The spotlight found her, warm and bright against the darkness. It's good to be home, she said into the microphone, her voice steady and clear. Some of you might have known me when I was serving coffee at Riverside Diner. A cheer went up from a section near the back. She spotted Lou and Danny standing on their seats, waving wildly. This first song is where it all began, she continued. I used to hum it while refilling coffee cups, never imagining anyone would actually want to hear it. Her fingers found the opening notes of Midnight Confessions, the song that had started everything. As she played, memories washed over her. Exhausted mornings counting tips, late nights at her keyboard, the first time Ray had heard her humming, her terrified debut at the Blue Note. Each step, each struggle and triumph had led to this moment. The song ended to thunderous applause. May looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, most strangers, all connected by her music. Among them were the people who had known her before, who had seen her potential even when she couldn't see it herself. "My next album is called Full Circle," she told the audience. "Because no matter how far you go, the most important thing is remembering where you came from." As her band joined her and they launched into the next song, May felt a sense of completion. The journey from serving plates to hitting keys had been unpredictable and challenging, filled with doubt and sacrifice and unexpected joy. But sitting here now, making music for a room full of people who wanted to hear it, May knew she had found her place. Not in the spotlight necessarily or on magazine covers, but in the perfect harmony between who she had been and who she had become. And later, when the show was over and the lights came up, she would go to the small after-party Hank had arranged at Riverside Diner. She would play a few songs on the upright piano they'd brought in for the occasion, surrounded by the people who had been there from the beginning. Because sometimes the most meaningful journeys end exactly where they started. Only you return as someone new, someone who has been transformed by every step of the path.